Our next inductee wrestled at 118 pounds. He might have been tiny in weight, but he was not tiny in his accomplishments. Career record 89, 35, and 1 at 118 pounds. He ranked third all-time in takedowns. Since Kurt Angle was the #1 guy in takedowns, imagine the guy that was just shortly behind Kurt Angle in number of takedowns in a career. It's unbelievable. 25-4-2 his senior year, 5th at the NCAAs. The team was actually 8th at the NCAAs that year among all Division I teams. The 92 team also ranked 9th on the NCAA Division I final poll. He was 31-8-1 as a junior, and also an NCAA qualifier both in '91 and in 1990. Let's welcome 118-pound wrestler Erik Burnett. Well, welcome to the stage. You waited 18 months for this.
Yeah, it was worth it. It's all good.
You were a 4-time state champion at Oberlin High School. Tell us about your recruiting trip to Clarion and why Clarion stood out as #1.
Well, first of all, thank you to the committee in the Hall of Fame, and thanks to everyone who's here. And thank you for all your work on this, Coach Harmon. I appreciate it. Coach Davis was recruiting me, and it's like I tell the wrestlers that I coach now, and maybe we'll get into that here as we go along. But I did things both ways. I did things right, and I did things wrong. And most often, when I did things the right way, good things happened for me. And when I did things the wrong way, not so good things happened to me. So as a result, I did a lot of good things in high school. I paid attention to my parents. My mom right here, Ruth Burnett. My dad passed away in 2017, but obviously I owe so much to my parents. And I did about 95% of what they wanted me to do, is what they encouraged me to do. The one thing I didn't do was I didn't put enough work and effort into my studies. As a result, there were numerous opportunities with schools that were pretty much taken off the table for me. Schools do their homework, coaches do their homework, and they find out who's going to make it academically and who may not. However, Clarion just kept calling. Coach Davis continued to call me, and it kind of came down between Ohio State and Clarion. And so Coach Davis set up a visit, and I came up here with my dad, and that was it. You look at a place, and you look at the people in the place, and I told my dad on the way home, I felt like, Coach Davis either had ESP or he did his homework, because he knew exactly where to take me when I came here. We went on this running trail. He knew I liked to run as far as the things I like to do to stay in shape, whatnot. So he took me on this amazing running trail, and then put me with a couple of kids that he probably figured I'd get along with on the recruiting visit. And then the next day, of course, before I went home, I met with Coach Bubb, and that was it. I felt at the time that I would never, ever deal with any kind of dishonesty. I felt like it was always going to be an open book policy, and that's exactly what it was. It was a can't miss, really. And that's kind of how that went.
Well, you mentioned then your first year, because of your grades, you weren't able to wrestle your first year. You had to sit out. And then, of course, we talked, what would have been your freshman year, you got hurt. So you went a year and a half basically without wrestling. And tell them how tough that was for you. Well,
when you lose something, as you all know, okay, what we've gone through for the past 18 months, right? When you lose something that you've been doing your whole life and you love, okay, you go through transitions, and some of them aren't good. And so I went from being around people who probably, when you think about success, you think about being around like-minded people. I veered away from that because it broke my heart that I couldn't compete. I couldn't be on the team with my guys. We followed the rules, and the fact of the matter was, I was a Proposition 48, and I had to sit out my freshman year, and you did not participate with your team. And I found workouts, the coaches, they couldn't do anything. They weren't allowed. So it was like, I tried to do what I could to stay relevant in the wrestling world. But to be honest with you, I started making poor choices. And, Coach Bubb talks about, not having hair now, and I'm sure I played a contributing factor in that for my first couple of years with the program. But once again, you have to have patience, as Coach and I were just discussing, and the coaches had patience with me, and I had amazing people around me. So ultimately, I was able to pull it back together with a lot of faith and a lot of people who just wouldn't give up on me. So yeah, going a year and a half without being able to wrestle, that was terribly difficult for me. But my family around me, and I'm talking my Clarion family around me, never gave up.
Yeah, you mentioned 3 names in particular, actually 4 when we talked. Mike Cole, Kurt Angle, Justin Kazemka, Mike Clark? Or not Clark?
Mike Cole, and then everybody. I mean, Brian Burke.
But you really emphasized the fact that they kept you on the straight and narrow. They pulled you back in to where you wanted to be.
Well, they tried. I mean, I give them that. I give them credit. Yeah, they succeeded. And you know, so you learn something from everybody. Okay, and that's how Clarion is, right? At least for me. I think it's a great place because the community. I learned something from everybody. I could learn something at the barbershop. I could learn something from a teammate. I obviously learned from my coaches. But I had some teammates who would stand me up. I had guys who would, you know, if we were complaining in the locker room or being negative or whatnot, there were guys that would say, "Hey, Burnie, man, why don't you shut it and start getting a little more positive?" You know what I mean? And that was important, and I learned that, you know, and we talked about it, you know. In 1987-88, our team, I think we were 4-12. We didn't have a great year. And then by the time we were finished, you know, 4 years later, you know, we were 8th in the country. But that was culture, okay? And it started with the coaches and the team leaders. And I had team leaders that helped me in so many aspects of my life. Guys that said, "Hey, you need to do better academically." You know, Kurt Angle stood me up and said, "Why don't you start doing some of the things that I'm doing, and instead of doing some of the things you're doing?" And you know, Justin Kazemka was helped me figure out what I was going to major in. You know, these are teammates who weren't afraid to be honest with me and tell me, you know, their thoughts and what they thought maybe would help me. And it's hard. And I've been coaching now for almost 30 years. And I tell the athletes that I coach, the student athletes I coach, okay, your team needs leaders. Okay, you have to be, as members of the team, you have to lead, because just coming from us coaches a lot of times isn't good enough, unfortunately. And that's what I had phenomenal teammates.
So your sophomore year, you have a pretty good year. Your junior year, you have a pretty good year. You go 2-2 at nationals, and you lose in the blood round.
Yeah.
And tell the folks how that changed your preparation for your senior year.
So yeah, it's one of those things when, you know, you're training to be. For one, you know, you don't want to, and you guys are all competitive, so you get it. So when you're training to be the starter on the team, that's not good enough, right? So you win the starting spot, and you're like, oh, okay, so you're feeling good about yourself. That's never good enough. When you're training to be an All-American, most of the time, that's not good enough. And I tell the student athletes I train right now, you know, if I'm training to be 8th in the country, and that's my goal, okay, because All-Americans top 8, and if that's my goal, think about how hard it is to attain your goals, right? So you have this goal, and when you attain a goal, it's so special, because most people don't. They don't attain their goal. So when you're training to be 8th, oftentimes you're going to end up in that round of 12, right? And I feel like I worked really, really hard through my junior year, and I ended up coming up a match short. Had a tough wrestler in the match to place at the NCAA Tournament. And I had wrestled him before, and he had pinned me because he was very good on top. And for those of you, I don't want to talk too much wrestling speak, but it's like, you know, when I would get taken down by somebody, I wasn't very good there, and I needed to improve. So the guy that I wrestled my junior year in the match to place to become an All-American, our score was actually 0-0. I was very competitive. I liked my chances until he picked the top position in the third period and promptly beat me up at that point. So I had 365 days to figure out what it was going to take to get on the podium. And I just went from training to be an All-American to training to be a national champion. And I tried to pull out all the stops. And that was huge for me. And we had a lot of fun. We worked wrestling camp. But, you know, there were times where instead of going and going up to getting Eddie dogs, okay, we would go in the weight room. And I started following guys around on the team, guys like Kurt Angle, who were very successful. I started doing what they were doing. And so I felt very confident going into my senior year.
And so let's just take it right to the NCAA Nationals. You make it again to the blood round. And this time you felt different in preparation. Tell them who you beat and how you felt going into that. And of course you do win that match.
Yeah, well, the quarterfinals, I ended up with a decent seed. I think I was 7th seed that year. And I knew that, of course, you take one match at a time, or one game at a time, or whatever, right? You never overlook anybody. So I had a couple of pretty good matches my first 2 rounds at the NCAA tournament. And then I drew a guy named Chad Zapital from Iowa. He had beaten me the year prior at the NCAA tournament. And we had looked at video, and I, of course, the way I felt like I was training, I felt like I had a really, really good shot at beating him. He was ranked 2nd in the country at the time. I was the 7th seed, so whatever I was ranked, I don't know. But yeah, and then either he wrestled like the best match of his life, or I wrestled the worst match of my life. I don't know which, but it culminated in a 17-6 crushing defeat. So he smashed me. And I had a number of hours to get it together, because at that point, the next match I had to wrestle was that match to become an All-American. And I had to wrestle a guy I never beat, and I had to wrestle a guy who beat me up when he got on top of me in my worst position. But like I said, when I had devoted those 365 days to becoming a national champion, like I tell the kids I coach, there are no guarantees. And I lost to the Iowa guy, and my chance to be a national champion was gone. But I had to do the next best thing, and I had to get it back together and go out and get it done. And without my coaches and my teammates, it doesn't happen. I had people helping me all spring, all summer, all fall, and then the entire wrestling season, being able to get away from somebody and not getting beat up when the guy gets on top of me. And that's what happened. I got away from him, and I won the match. And you know, it was pretty amazing. It's a weird thing. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the feeling. But like I said, that doesn't happen without everybody at Clarion, and I'm talking about everybody, because I learned lessons from every angle in both the university, but the college, the town, everywhere.
I know before we go to thank yous, I know you wanted to say something about Coach Bob.
So yeah, I've been coaching now for, I don't know, about 30 years, including I did a couple of years coaching college, and then I've done a lot of high school coaching. And I was telling Coach, the first 3 years I was coaching at my current school, we were absolutely terrible. And you know, you'd like to win as a coach, you know what I mean? And you're trying to send all the right messages, right, to all the kids. I mean, they're life lessons. It's more important than winning, but you do like to win. So the first 3 years were rough, you know, and I'm calling Coach, and I'm calling Coach Bob, and I'm like, hey, I don't know. And he's like, Burnie, you know, you can lead a horse to water, you know, you got to be patient, and you know, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know, but I listened to him, okay, and I was patient, and as a result, I ended up having a bunch of good people come through our program, and we've had a lot of success, and but I've been a master. I don't want to call myself a thief, because that's kind of a negative connotation, but I've borrowed a lot, and it starts with Coach Bubb. My understanding of people and kids, and my willingness to never give up on a kid or give them second and third chances, all came from Coach Bubb. Without that, okay, I'm not who I am. It doesn't happen. I've had the opportunity to impact numerous young people throughout the years. And without that, without Coach Bubb's guidance and belief in me, you know, as a 115-pound, scrawny, 17-year-old Prop 48 kid coming in here, man, you know, and to never, ever give up, that has helped me help other people, if that makes sense. And you know, I said I wouldn't have that opportunity. And when you look at the impact that you have the opportunity to make on other people, and you know where it came from, right? Obviously, I owe a ton to my parents, okay? But as they turn me over to Clarion and their coaching staff and their faculty. Like I said, I learned so much. I learned a lot from professors, Dr. Levy, and I'm not talking about what I learned in earth science and things like that, because whatever, I learned stuff there too, but I learned like life stuff from people, everybody around here, and that's what college is supposed to be, right? You're supposed to learn how to live. And that's what Clarion did for me, and I couldn't be more appreciative.
A few thank yous.
Yeah, I want to once again, I want to thank the committee, the Hall of Fame. I want to thank Mr. Herman. I want to obviously thank my coaches, and Coach Nellis is here today, and Coach Bubb, and the current coaching staff from Clarion is here. I want to thank my high school coaches, everybody that helped me make my way, my teammates, Brian Burke, Justin Kazemka, Mike Cole. Mike Cole was instrumental as well, Kurt Engel. So many people. I could sit here. As like I told you, I could talk about Clarion for about 10 hours, but I'm pretty sure everybody'd be out of here by then. So.
Let's hear it for Erik Burnett.